Good evening and a warm welcome to Pallikkutam GlobalConnect 8. This weekly program was conceived by Rajagiri Media as a platform for experts in various areas to interact with stakeholders in education. And we are glad to note that this event has been a success from its very first episode. We dealt with several interesting topics in our previous events, such as mobile addiction, gender sensitivity, innovative tools for online education, nutrition and health in times of pandemic, and important students. Those who missed it can see them on our Pallikkutam Facebook page and YouTube channel. Today's topic is defining and assessing career aptitude in students. We are fortunate to have Mr. Deepu Xavier, a successful IT professional and entrepreneur, as our guest. Mr. Deepu Xavier has over 15 years experience in Infosys, Bosch and Oracle and was featured in the Young Leaders of India list of Economic Times in 2012. He is the co-founder of Zappyhire, an HR and management solutions company. A career is generally a journey that an individual makes through education and work and forms a major part of their life. In this sense, occupation is just a part of their career, and it is a larger idea encompassing the growth and development of the individual. This is not a conventional career counseling session, but intended to give deep insights into what makes an individual succeed in his or her chosen career. Now, without delay, let's start. I request all participants to mute your audio and raise questions in the chat box or wait till the presentation is over for the question and answer session. This event is also being streamed live on Facebook. Participants may also use the comments box to raise questions. On behalf of all of you, I extend a warm welcome to Mr. Deepu Xavier and invite him to start his presentation.
Thank you, Nicey. I hope I'm audible and clear, right?
Yes, you're audible and you're very clear.
All right, so let me just share my screen and please do let me know if you can see that. And yes, we are all good to start.
Yes, we can. We can see your screen.
All right. Okay. So thank you for that introduction, Nicey. So I hope I'm pronouncing your name right.
Yes.
All right. Cool. Super. Okay. So thank you and a very good evening to all of you. I'm not going to introduce myself again because I think Nicey has done a good job at it. So on a very high level, I'm an entrepreneur. I was an engineer. And before that, I was a student who always had a passion to do certain things. But again, the reason why when Mr. Srikumar was suggesting this particular topic, that is, how can you better select a right career? I could relate to myself. I mean, maybe around 20 years back when I had an option to choose which career option should I take? Should I go for engineering? Should I go for medicine? Or should I do something else? Just like I would say any other student that would have faced, I had all this confusion, like which one to do, which one would be the right career option for me. So I'm not 100% sure about the audience that we have. Is it like tutors or is it like parents or is it more of students? I'm not sure. So we'll try to keep it generic. And so the intention of this session is primarily to have a right approach. So even if you are a parent, I mean, I have 2 kids. The way I would typically talk to them to say, hey, this is the way you should think. So because we can't influence, of course we can influence, but we shouldn't force them to a particular career because that is what you as a guardian or you as a teacher would want your kids to be, right? You want to just leave an open door to them. But as a responsible individual, you should be in a position to say, this is the right way to think and select a career. And there are multiple ways to do that. You can go for counseling. You can go for an extended counseling, maybe for a few years, and you can have a mentor. There are multiple options, and gamification could be one of those options, which would be an ideal fit to help you pick the right career. I'm not saying that gamification is the only option, but this is just one of those many options that potentially you as a student or a tutor or a parent can consider while you're helping or choosing a career. I hope that was clear. Now, before we move on, I just want to ensure that we don't get into this misconception about gamification, because the other day I was talking about this particular session to one of my friends. And he was saying that, okay, so gamification, are you going to talk about this technical thing? Are you going to talk about how to play a game and identify what is a career? So there is all this how do you say, myth around gamification. People always think gamification as okay, let's sit in front of a computer, or take a mobile app and play a game, and game is going to say that you're good at it or you're not good at it. So gamification is not about that, in case if you have a question around it. So gamification is all about creating an ecosystem where the participant feels that even without his manual intervention, or even without totally into the environment, he feels that he's a part of that thing. He's a part of that environment. He has a goal. He has to achieve something. And there is a learning involved in that entire journey. Like the first time I'm playing a game and engaging in that particular interaction, I may not do well, but the second time I learn from my experience and I improve my skill and move on. There should be a sense of achievement. That's the important thing. Like my eldest son, he's just 6 years old. And during his kindergarten, I mean, when he was like 3.5 to 4 years old, he was going to one of this kindergarten, a KG. And he used to be very happy when he comes back from the school if he has a star on his hand. Okay, so I would say it's already part of our pedagogy if you look at it. Teachers are already applying these small gamification concepts into the kids' learning curriculum itself. Like if you write something in a very neat way, he'll get a sticker. And he is even more happy if he has 3 stars in his hand. If he has 1 star, he's happy. If he has 3 stars, he's extremely happy. So I think that even when a very small age, we are already involving, or we are already having this gamification concepts introduced into a student's curriculum, or then the pedagogy, I would say, not I would say curriculum, but the pedagogy, how you're teaching that your students, right? So here, just imagine that rather than just for achievement, if you can create an ecosystem wherein you help your mentee or your students, or if you are a student yourself, for you, just imagine that you're able to go in a methodical journey. And ultimately, the result is 2 parts. One, it could be see whether your aspiration and your skills or your learning capability or learning pattern is in line. Point number 2, to ensure that you're not on a wrong path altogether. Because always there are 2 things. I personally believe that we want to be something and what we are capable of could be different. I may want to be the president of India. I may want to be the an entrepreneur. I may want to be a teacher. I may want to be a doctor. But do I have it in me? So that awareness is very much important. So that is where I believe that gamification as a methodology can potentially help in categorically deciding what is the right way to go about. I'll show you a couple of examples based on my limited experience. I'll show you how this has helped me personally. Okay. So I hope that with this, we don't have this misconception that gamification is not just about a technological platform where you actually play a game. You can be a part of an interaction where you feel challenged. You feel that you are progressing. You feel competitive. And you feel that you are rewarded. So that reward gives you a sense that, okay, I should perform a little bit better next time. Okay, so this is what the gamification that we are talking about, not the real playing game. Of course, a playing game could be a part of it, maybe in the future. Now, I mean, if I ask this question, what do you want to be? This is a very common question that each one of us would have gone through. Right from your first standard or second standard, your teacher would have started asking, hey, Deepu, what do you want to be? And he would have given some fancy answer because your mom or your dad wants that. Okay, one day you'll become a doctor, one day you'll become an engineer. And you just repeat it, right? So the question is, at that point, it is okay. I mean, it's somebody else saying, and it's on the back of your head, you know that I want to be an engineer, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a teacher, I want to be a politician. It doesn't really matter. At that time, it's very young age. It's always good to have a direction, but that may not be the real thing. I mean, no, for most of them, there may be some very few people who are really focused right from the very young age that I want to be a civil servant, which is very good. But many a case, at least if I take my example, I don't remember what I used to say when somebody asked me what was my ambition. I would have said just based on the movie that I would have seen one day back. I would leave it there. But that's the main problem. If you look at the main thing, you say that this is my aspiration, but often what happens is that if you are the one who is saying it, you just speak it. If you are a teacher who is listening from your student, you will say, I heard it, good, all the best. The question is, what are we doing after we say this thing that I want to be, say, for example, I want to be an entrepreneur. The moment you say, I want to be an entrepreneur, there are a lot of things which you can potentially do right from your, say, 6th standard or 7th standard, or even before that. Or there's a lot of things until you're 21, 22. There's a lot of engagement. There's a lot of involvement that we as a guardian or a teacher or you yourself can do. So today's session will be primarily, on a very high level, it will be around that. Okay. Now, as of now, what happens is you say that I want to be an entrepreneur. Typically, what happens is that you focus on the technical prerequisites. You want to be a civil servant. Okay, you just say that, okay, start reading newspaper. Right from your 8th standard, you start reading newspaper, gulp all possible knowledge that comes around your way. And that primarily is it. You focus on those areas. You focus on the technical prerequisites or theoretical aspects, I would say. The subject matter knowledge. These are the primary areas that every student, I mean, let me not generalize it, but most of us would be focusing on the technical prerequisites. But that is not really the best way. There could be, say, when I say that I want to be an entrepreneur, a person who knows me in depth might say that, good that you want to be an entrepreneur, but I think you can be a good doctor, or I think you can be a good engineer. I think you can be a good teacher. So there could be a better option, which I'm not aware of. So somebody who is on the other side, when you're being said that, okay, this particular person wants to be ABC or XYZ, you as a responsible mentor or somebody, or good teacher, you can potentially tell that, is this the right choice? Have you thought about it? On what ground are you saying that you want to be this? We should be in a position to ask this question back to your ward, saying that, there could be a better option. This may not be the right choice. Are you having the right skill towards that? Or is it your own ambition, or is it influenced by somebody else? And if it is your own ambition, are you working towards it on a daily basis or on a quarterly basis? There should be something that is improving in yourself, right? Let me take an example, I would say. I'll actually showing a document from my mailbox. So when IC was introducing me, she said that I was a part of I was shortlisted by Economic Times as the Young Leader of India in 2012. That was like 9 years back. So at that time, I was working with Infosys as a manager. And this initiative, Economic Times Young Leader, if you haven't heard about it, is about, it's a 3 to 4 months program. Okay, so during this 3 to 4 months program, you get involved in multiple levels of engagement, multiple levels of assessment by various, which is a pioneer in behavioral. They have done is that first they conducted a psychometric assessment on me. I mean, all the participants. And then after around a month or so, you had another round of psychometric assessment and multiple types of assessment. So now they're looking at how consistent is your performance. And that performance is about what I want to be. It's not demonstration. It's my inclination. I hope I'm making myself clear here. My inclination could be different. My demonstration could be different. I say that I want to be an astronaut. I want to be like a space engineer, but I'm not demonstrating anything good in physics or maths. So there's a strong mismatch between these two, right? Similarly, this Economic Times Young Leader, there were 4 rounds, 4 or 5, 4 rounds, I think. 2 rounds was primarily around what is my inclination. They asked questions in multiple ways, tweaked around in a span of 3 to 4 weeks. They span out various questions and understand, is it really what you claim you to be? I'm saying I want to be this. That's my inclination. And around 1 month later, they invited some of the selected participants who showed consistency in response, at least in the written response. They invited to Mumbai Economic Times office. And there, what they did is that it was that was the first game, not first, I would say. That was the 4th gamification experience that I can remember. The first 3 I'll tell a little later. The 4th gamification experience that I had. And in this, what they did is that they put me in I think 12 of us into a conference room. They called it as a boardroom. It's a boardroom simulation. And they gave, each one of us had a role to play. I was an HR head. Somebody else was a chief financial officer. Somebody else was a chief technology officer. Some of them, one of the person was a CFO. So various roles to be played. Everybody, each one of us had a folder with a lot of information about the company, this virtual company that we're talking about. And we were given 1 hour, 30 minutes. And we were asked to come up with a strategy to improve the profit of the company by, say, let's put 10% or 5% improvement in profit. So the question was about, or the assessment was like, there were some 3-4 evaluators sitting on all 4 corners of the room, and they just silently observe you, how you interact with people, how you talk to them, how you convince others, how you strategically communicate and bring people to a conclusion. How do you decipher the content in the folder that you have? What is your analytical capability? All these things are silently evaluated by people sitting in the room, some 3 or 4 evaluators. And after all these things, they gave this report. And even I think after that, we were assigned to a CEO, one of the blue chip CEO. I was interviewed. The CEO panel was the CEO of, I think, JP Morgan, Chris Gopalakrishnan from Infosys, Rajan Anandan from Google, Kalpana Morparia, Vineet Nair from HCL. So who is who of Indian IT industry was a CEO panel. And after that, they interviewed the selected few people. And finally, some of us were lucky to be in that final Economic Times Young Leader. And this report was shared with us after this assessment. Okay. So now I'll show you a few of this result of the gamification. You see here, these are the competency-wise feedback, like deciding and initiating action. This was one of the parameters that they wanted a leader to achieve, a leader to have. And this inclination is what I have. I'm saying I am. So if somebody asks, how good is your deciding and initiating action? I say, I'm very effective, something similar to that. And it's not about asking me. It's about multiple rounds of assessment and what I claimed in the subjective paper. Whenever I gave a response, how did I behave? I behaved as if I have a good deciding and initiating action. Then this demonstrated is basically their evaluation. They evaluate you when they literally physically see you in a room. They evaluate you based on the responses that you would have given to the interview panel and all those things. So ultimately, this is what I want to focus on. I mean, I'm not saying that I am always very effective in, you'll be able to see some literal funny things here. Relating and networking. I claim that I'm outstanding, but I was just effective. Okay. So they said, what is bad about me? What is good about me? And all those things. They gave a detailed report about leadership, because I said I want to be an entrepreneur, and about leadership, they have a lot of those parameters that they have identified, and they gamified this entire engagement in a 4-month period and gave a report about me. And finally, in the report, it's a big report. They say, what was the untapped potential and what are the harnessed potential? Being a leader, I mean, you say that you are a leader, and if you say that you are a leader, analyzing, formulating strategy, and relating and networking back in 2012, I would say pathetic. That's the reason why they put over here. But there are a lot of other things which they felt that I'm probably good at. So the reason why I'm trying to showcase is this was, as I said, the 4th gamification experience that I had. And that was a game changer for me. Until then, I never thought about entrepreneurship. That was never my ambition to be an entrepreneur. After seeing this, I understood that, okay, I mean, these things are there. I mean, it's not really bad. Even if I potentially, if I start up a company, maybe I can do reasonably well. At least I can show some good result inside that. So we, as a entrepreneur, a teacher or a mentor or a parent, I think what we should ensure, or even if you're a student, what you should do is you have to ensure that you go through the self-introspection to understand your aspiration. What is your aspiration? What are the traits that is required, and where do you stand? Get it assessed. That is really critical. And then you would know what is that you want to be. Until this, I was always thinking that I'll be like a technical engineer or something like that in an organization, and I'll retire from a company like Infosys, where I was working at that point in time, and happily have a retired life after that. That was my philosophy. But things changed after that, because you know that, okay, this is what you're good at. So then you should think beyond. You should think maybe one step ahead and see what you can potentially do. All right. So this is one way to think about gamification. Now, I said that there are a couple of other gamification instances which actually had a very positive impact on me. In 6th standard, I remember there was this pen called Rotomac pen. I mean, if some of you could remember from that, that was in, I think, maybe 1996, 95 types, I think. At that time, this Rotomac pen was there, and our biology teacher, so she said that whomsoever is going to get the maximum mark in the term 1, term 2 together, I'll give this pen. So that was like a motivation. So the teacher, I think at that time I got this pen, and so you're really happy. You're working towards that reward. And there was another thing, that was when I was again in 6th standard. My school, they introduced this concept of if you get 1st rank, you will get a badge. If you get 2nd rank, you will get a 2nd rank badge. If you get 3rd rank, you'll get a 3rd rank badge. I'm not saying that this ranking philosophy is good or bad, but what I'm trying to say is that was the only time in my career, I mean, in my 12th, the 14 years of schooling, that I got a 1st rank. And the 7th standard, they stopped this, and I don't know, I again went back to that 70% as always. So this gamification, I believe that can potentially have a positive impact on a lot of people, and it will help you to understand whether this person has the potential. Okay, so those are the kind of gamification that we're talking about. Like gamify the environment wherein you can actually leverage or bring out the best in your candidates, your people, the people around you. Okay. Now, this is what I just said. Like, what is a better way to do this rather than just saying, okay, this is my aspiration. Okay, you go for it and study, learn more, study more and more so that you can achieve that. Of course, I'm not saying study is not important. That is the most important thing, but not most, that is important. And equally important is the behavioral and the other traits that is required around that particular job. So what are the traits? See, break down your aspiration into multiple traits and address the traits that you're talking about. See how do you stand in that trait? How are you demonstrating around that? So as a teacher or as a mentor, what you have to do is when you're talking, it may be time consuming, but it is rewarding, I would say. That is what you should do. If somebody says that I want to be this, sit with him, try to explain him what is it all about, and what are the different skills, different traits that might be required for that, and help him measure that and improve on a day-to-day basis. Okay, I mean, it's not going to take much time, but consider this example. If one of your students says that, or if you want to be an entrepreneur, I don't know how you will be approaching this. You'll say, good, if you want to be an entrepreneur, get some good marks, pass out from IIT or NIT kind of thing, and then start up. And that is all what I believe that at least I would have said this. If I was not introduced into this Economic Times Young Leader Initiative, I would have said exactly what I just said now. Pass out from some good institute, create some financial backup, work for some time, create a financial backup, and then start up. But now, having been an entrepreneur for almost 3 years now, what I would say is, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you should be good at communication. You should be good at financial planning. You should have a good stakeholder management. You should have good delegation capability. You should be able to manage a team. You should be able to mentor. You should be able to build trust between people, I mean, in your team. And most importantly, you should have a good empathy. Empathy towards your team members, empathy towards your customers, empathy towards your society. All these things are required if you want to be a good entrepreneur. Now, as compared to what we discussed earlier, I want to be an entrepreneur, pass out from some good institute, learn a lot of different things, and then start up. Rather than that, what you should have potential done is break this down in entire thing into these pieces. Help the candidate or help your student to focus on each one of this thing and help them improve. Again, as I said in the initial slide, there are multiple ways to do it. One could be gamification. So I'm not going into the details of each of these things, but I'll just create a framework of a couple of things in the interest of time. One could be, say, for example, when it comes to communication. I believe that I was really bad when it comes to communication. Really bad as in, I mean, I'm coming from a very small village in Kerala, not much exposed. So naturally, I mean, I believe that when I attended my Infosys interview, one of the feedback that the lady gave was that you have too much of slang. I'm not saying I have improved now, but it's much better than how I was earlier. So you can imagine how I was at that point in time. So if you have too much of slang in your language, you have to improve a lot on your language. That's one of the comments that she gave frankly on my face at that time. It was in 2005. I mean, when I was giving my campus interview. So what happened is that after that you joined Infosys, I joined Infosys, and there was this Toastmasters club. I'm sure that most of you would have either be a part of it or you have heard of it. So for those, in case if you haven't, so Toastmasters club actually helps you communicate in a closed room with people with like mind. I mean, everyone wants to improve on their communication. Everyone wants to improve their public speaking skill. So when you're it's like a acting theater types. Even if you're not a great actor, you know that everybody in the room is there to learn. So you don't feel bad. Everybody wants to learn, right? So similarly, the Toastmasters Club also creates an environment wherein you can just go there, participate in some speeches, and there will be an evaluator sitting and evaluating the speech, your presentation, and give constructive feedback back to the speaker. So this is a very interesting framework for improving your communication. So when I was a part of that, this gamification concepts, actually, I mean, this gamification was not there at that point in time, but you can actually apply this gamification, for example, in a Toastmasters club or on a speaking club or a reading club. So imagine that you have a scoreboard. Imagine that you're gonna assign points for every person who is gonna sign up saying that, okay, next week I'm gonna speak about this particular topic. Assign points for that particular person, and then maybe introduce a scoring mechanism. Like you can have a survey rolled out right after the session, and all the participants would score the candidate, and based on the point that the candidate receives, his point, like, I mean, if he's getting more than 4 stars, he might get a 3 point. If it's less than between 3 and 4 stars, he'll get 2 points. Similarly, you create a scoreboard, assign points for every interaction that you every actual activities that you're doing as a part of that framework, and you reward the top performer end of the maybe every quarter or every month or every 6 months or 1 year. That way, you as a candidate or you as a person has a motive to do better next time. All right. You always have a, like, it's an engaging platform. You know that you're improving. You know that, okay, last time I got 5 out of 10. This time I'm getting a 6 out of 10 on my speech performance. That way, rather than just being a part of a Toastmasters club, this gamified Toastmasters can actually add a lot more result to a particular speaker or a participant. Similarly, I'll take a very simple another example. All right. Sorry, 1 second. Yeah. So it could be like, how do you gamify mentoring? I mean, why I'm saying mentoring is because if you remember, I'm just taking a couple of examples, so I'm not taking much time. Communication and mentoring is a couple of things which, my aspiration is I want to be an entrepreneur, this is something which I really want. Mentoring is a critical key. Like, I'm an entrepreneur now, and for the first 1 year, we were just a team of 4 people. And then we were a team of like 8 to 10. Now we are a team of almost close to 20 people. So the essence of entrepreneurship is to delegate, mentor people, and then to delegate and create the next level of leadership. Only unless and until you create a next level of leadership, you will not grow as a company. If you as an entrepreneur, if you are involving in every single thing, you will never scale up, right? So you want to mentor people and bring them to the next stage. Now, if you want to teach mentoring to your students, a school student or a college student, if you want to teach mentoring, how would you do that? It's a tricky topic, right? So what I've seen which potentially can work out is communication is an important thing for everyone. And communication, you can create a speaking club. Now imagine for every person who is coming into the communication or a speaking club, you assign a mentor, an older participant or an experienced participant as a mentor to the other person. And you say that you get 1 point if your mentee performs. That way, one of the easiest way would be to assign a mentee and say that when the mentee gains a point, you get maybe 10% of that point. So that gives me a motivation as a mentor to ensure that my mentee is actually performing up to the mark. That will improve my commitment towards mentoring. Otherwise, mentoring is all about a one-sided activity unless the other person is pulling things. You want to say something, he wants to listen to something, but it's never in sync. But in this case, you're creating a common platform for both the party and say that you ensure that your word is actually performing. So this is one way of, again, gamification. So again, if I say not to complicate things, gamification is all about creating an environment which will help a participant to be a part of that in a willful manner, and where he feels that I'm actually contributing to it and I'm learning, I'm getting a new skill and I am rewarded and I should be able to see the progress. I should never be feeling that I'm stagnant. Just imagine a very simple thing. Suppose, I'm sure all of you would have played some game in a mobile phone, right? Suppose you are in a car racing kind of a game, but there is no point. There is no scoring mechanism. There is no leaderboard. There is no time. There is no timeout kind of thing. No penalty, nothing. You just have a control. You're just driving. Nothing is happening. You're just driving through a road. You will never call it as a game. You will call it as a simulation. That's it. Every other framework you have to create around it. It's a very similar thing. If you keep on teaching things, what happens is that he's in a journey. He's not in a gamified environment. That is the reason, like even exams are gamified. That's the reason why I was initially saying the gamification is already a part of our pedagogy. Having an exam is a gamified thing because you are actually testing the candidate. And the problem is that 1 year of learning is tested at the end of the year or maybe every quarter, every term. But that 3 months they have to learn to get a reward end of the day. It's a too long a duration, and people of this generation, they want instant gratification. So how do you balance this instant gratification versus giving a result after every term? That is where you have to drill this entire thing down. Subject matter and the theoretical knowledge being one aspect. Identify the other pieces as well. Maybe theoretical aspects is not maybe just contributing to 40 or 30% of a person's success. Everything else is the attitude. So as a responsible teacher or a mentor, what we have to ensure is that the learning content and the concept, while that is being very important, we have to focus on the behavioral aspects and a lot of other things and package it such that even if I'm getting only say 60% mark, I might be very good at a lot of other aspects, which will compensate for that remaining 40% that I'm not getting in my exam. Otherwise, what happens is that as a student, you always feel that, oh, I'm a 60%. This is what exactly I felt all the way till my 12th standard. I'm an average student. So this is how things are going to be. And okay, that's how it will be. I mean, I will land upon some job that really it's not in my control because I'm just an average person. This is the kind of thing that always hits your head. So that is where I believe that potentially gamification, maybe a lot of methods, would help you to involve the person in a more engaging manner, help them to identify what are the different traits that we are talking about, measure them in a gamified environment so that they feel that they are actually part of a game. They are part of an engaged journey and they know that, okay, I am improving. So that like you have this temple run game every time. I mean, if you think about it, it's a boring game, right? You play the same thing, you jump the same runs, you do the same thing over and over again, but you try to compete against yourself. And that's what keeps you motivated and that's what keeps you in the game. Similarly, here also, if you create that environment wherein you are actually seeing the progress, you want to improve, you have to always, you compete against yourself. It's not always that you compete against the other person. You just always compete against yourself, but still you'll be progressing, and you can see the progress, right? So with this, I would just, I think I'm almost on time. This is what I really wanted to put across. To concise the entire thing, career is all about what a person wants to be. Now, what we have to do is that, okay, that is really good. This is what you want to be. While that being said, you should understand what is in that career. What are the different things that you need? Handpick each of them, help them to understand where do they stand, and help them to improve it in a gamified journey so that they know they are improving. And ultimately, I'm sure that this particular person, once he goes through this journey, he'll be in a situation where he has a reasonably good theoretical knowledge. On top of that, he will have a very good grip on what are the other behavioral traits that are required. Engagement for not for career, but our company is Zappyhire is primarily a AI-based recruitment HR tech company, recruitment tech company, and we power a lot of customers on their entire recruitment cycle, and we have gamified engagements inside that to understand what is that candidate all about. We engage with candidates. I mean, not we, our customers engage with their candidates using a platform. Not just so rather than just seeing a CV or a resume, they get a 360-degree view of the candidate while they are assessing a candidate for a particular job. So like customers, like, I mean, a lot of IT companies, Federal Bank, ESAF Bank, all these people are using our solution for end-to-end campus recruitment, internship, lateral recruitment up to C-level. All those people, they are using our platform for their recruitment. And we are like a 2018 startup company. And before that, I was working with Oracle, where I was the product manager of the Java language. I'm sure you would have heard of this programming language called Java. So I was a product manager responsible for the Asia Pacific activities. Prior to that, I was working with Bosch as a product manager. And before that, for almost 9 years, I was working with Infosys. So if you the reason why I repeated this journey is I'm not like a subject matter in gamification, but we create gamified engagement. And on the career part, I have a personal interest because I was a victim of the others on the other side. And I could feel that this would have helped me achieve these things maybe 4 or 5 years back. So I feel that my career was delayed by 4 to 5 years because of it took time to understand what is there in me. It took time to understand what is the best for me. So if you have an option to make a difference to your students or to your kids, I would say try this if it makes sense to you. Only if it makes sense to you, just it's worth giving a try. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deepu Xavier. Now let's move on to the interactive session. Participants can ask questions directly or raise questions in the chat box. Okay, we have a question here. At what class we should do a career aptitude assessment?
Sorry, Nancy, can you please repeat that? You got broke off in between.
At what class we should do a career aptitude assessment?
So, as I said, it's a continuous activity. I mean, again, I'll tell from my perspective as a student, if I were a student, anything before, like even if you can ask the same thing to a class 2 student or a class 3 student, it is totally fine. But I believe that the moment they get introduced to the subjects, maybe all those physics, chemistry, English, you get a flair much before that. But that could be, my perspective is that that could be influenced by their parents. That could be influenced by maybe a movie that would have seen. So it's always good to align themselves along the direction of what they want. But the assessment, I would say, would be good if you do after maybe around the 6th or 7th standard, I would say, where they know, okay, this is what maths is all about. This is what physics is all about. This is what biology is all about. They should get introduced to the concepts around them. And that is the point when they say, because there are two aspects, right? Any good career option has two aspects. One, what do they want to achieve from that? Or what is the social value that they want to create out of that career? And the second is, what is in with me, whether I will be able to do justice to that particular thing. I may feel that I can be a good politician, but do I have that in me? May or may not be, right? So as a student, I should be in a position to understand these nuances before I can categorically say that this is what I really want to be. So my personal perspective is that anything after like 6th or 7th standard, you can start interacting with a student to understand. I'm sorry, I think I got lost in between. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible now. You
Okay,
weren't
sorry.
audible quite a while.
Was I like offline for quite some time because I was keeping on talking?
Yeah, a bit.
All right, sorry for that. So what I was saying was that in my case, if I look at it, I had a clear picture of my aspiration in 2012. Until then, I always used to say, I mean, I want to be this, I want to be that. And that was all motivated by some of the news clips that I would have seen. It would have been motivated by some of the movies that I would have seen. But I don't think that was a genuine aspiration coming out of me. So anything from like 6th standard, 7th standard until you are 30 or 40 or 50, I think you're totally open. That's my take. I'm sure there will be much better people to comment on this in this group. So please, I mean, I think it will be really good if anybody have a comment on this, please feel free to say that so that we get the best out of the session.
Thank you, Deepu, for that answer. Do we have any more questions? You can raise hands and ask directly or post it in the chat box, please. Okay, we have one question here. Are these traits of a profession measurable objectively?
Depends. Like, for example, which one I can say? For example, something, I mean, there are a lot of things which can be objectively measured, but there are certain things like which comes only on the fly, like taking decision, I would say. Taking decision on the fly or off the head decisions. That is something which I believe that it all depends on certain, like if I take a right decision today, that doesn't mean that I'm going to take a right decision tomorrow. But of course, you can always give a lot of, how do you say that? Like if you take a civil service exam, when you're there for the interview, you'll be asked multiple questions. And one of the typical type of question would be, what would you if you were in such a situation? And that's it off the hat, how are you deciding? But can you measure it? May not be always. But there are frameworks. If you look at the literature, there are frameworks for most of the traits that we're talking about. There'll be some or the other way to, I'll take you, there's something called a flanker test as an example. A flanker test would help you to understand how in a situation, you are not supposed to behave in a particular way, or in another way, you have to behave like this in a particular situation. So is it measurable? Ideally, in a practical sense, you would say it's not really measurable. But there are frameworks like, let me share my screen as I speak. I hope my screen is visible, right?
Yes, yes, your screen is visible.
Yeah, so this Erickson flanker test. So what they say is that a set of response inhibition test to assess the ability to suppress responses that are inappropriate. So in a practical sense, if you say that, that is basically how you behave. You're not supposed to respond in this inappropriate situation. So there are assessments which will help you to understand whether this candidate behaves in a required manner. Like, I mean, if I can actually show that game to understand how psychologists actually look at this game. So here, what they say is that you will see 5 letters. Okay, and if you see these are industry accepted and standard tools that we are talking about. If you see an X or a C, you have to press A. If you see V or a B, you have to press L. Okay, so here, if you see in the center, if you see X or C, you have to press A. So X or C, you have to press A. So you have to press L. Similarly, it is about X or B, C, you have to see press this particular thing. So similarly, this is a gamified engagement for certain things. In a normal course of time, we would say that this is not objectively measurable. So to answer your question, sir, the answer to that is yes and no, because profession is unlimited. It can be any profession, but for most of the professions, organizational psychologists and industry psychologists have already identified what are the behavioral traits required for that. And for most of these traits, there are gamified engagements which would potentially help you to understand how to do this particular thing. So it's always there. Most of these things are actually there. So this psychitool.org, psychtoolkit.org. If you go to this website, I'll actually put this in the chat box so that everyone has this. There is a lot of these different types of assessments that you can typically do inside this, just to see how you can potentially use this. Maybe I'll just paste it in the chat so that you can use it. I just pasted it there. This is a very good way to engage and to understand what are the different things of experiments that you can typically do. Yeah, you can actually see there are various different types of things you can do here for children, for adults, and all those things. I hope that answered.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Deepu, for that. Do we have any more questions?
I'm sorry, I just want to show one more thing. So these are the various different assessments that you can find in this one, like this negative priming or decision task, flanker test, fit slow. There's a lot of different area, which is practically a gamified way to understand the behavioral traits available in a particular person. So what you should typically do is to understand for this career, what are the different traits that is required. And that is where your effort would go, helping them progress. Yep.
Yeah, okay, thank you. We have one more question here. A lot of IT or knowledge companies give importance to grades or scores obtained in BTech or MTech while hiring. Do you think that needs a change?
I would parallelly look for a LinkedIn post that we put almost 1 or 2 years back, but I'll answer it in parallel. We as a company, there was a LinkedIn post which we put saying that if you have back papers, why don't you apply? And that is something which we had in our LinkedIn for quite some time. Because we believe that, of course, I mean, see, for a bigger organization where they have a lot of applicants in place, and there should be some way to cut off, right? There should be some way to cut off the candidate and maintain an eligibility check. So I would say in that cases, potentially this could come up. And that is where we as a company, Zappyhire, we are trying to stand out a little different, because we are coming up with gamified engagements to assess a candidate even before they are applying for a job. So for us, the eligibility check might be having, say, the typical things: the nationality, the age, the academics, the work experience. This is typically what a traditional organization would check. But now the situation is different. You look for the cultural match. You look for all the other traits before you say that whether the candidate is good or not. So when a candidate applies through one of the Zappyhire platforms, they are given a chance to take something called a robotic interview. It's an AI-based video interview where There is nobody on the other side. You just go to the web or a mobile app and you get random questions on your screen. You look at the front camera of your mobile phone and answer those questions. What we do is that we use Ocean model and a lot of other behavioral models to understand the personality trait of the candidate based on the answer that is given. We understand based on the IELTS scale. We also try to understand the language proficiency of the candidate, the verbal ability of the candidate, the fluency and the vocabulary score of the candidate, everything automatically based on the AI algorithms. So here it is not just about the score. To answer your question personally, and our company, we don't consider grade at all. I mean, I don't know when was the last time I would have looked at somebody's academic part. I mean, I would have checked that academic part to see which college he passed out from, because the college or the alma mater makes a lot of difference. That is the co-learning that the candidate gets. Coming from an IIM doesn't really, when I look at a candidate from IIM, it is not about his mental ability to that allowed him to be in IIM. The value that I see is he was actually a part of a good group of people, and he would have a good co-learning capability, chance, opportunity, and he would have learned from some of the best faculty that is available. So you may see that it is kind of related, but it's never the score that I would look at. And I am sure that most of the companies now, I mean, maybe the big companies do, but other than that, they don't really look at the score nowadays. I think that's what I feel. And my honest request will be, don't look at scores. Scores are required in certain cases, but when you're looking at the capability of a candidate, especially when it comes to this professional thing, IT organization for that matter, now there are a lot of freelancers away. With this COVID situation, you're not bound to a particular location, right? So what happens is that you always have the flexibility and to work for any company. So there are a lot of freelancers out there in the market now. So when you're hiring a freelancer, you never look at the score, right? You look at the profile, you look at how long they have been doing the freelancing, what are the work, you look at their portfolio, and that's what you do. That's it. Nothing more than that, I would say.
Thank you. Thank you, Deepu, for that. Do we have any more questions? You can ask your questions directly or post in the chat box, please. We have one question here. How can schools or colleges use gamification to help students? Is there a solution from Zappyhire?
I'm sorry, can you please come in? I just lost that first bit.
Yeah, how can schools or colleges use gamification to help students? Is there a solution from Zappyhire?
Okay, so we don't have a solution from Zappyhire at all, but I would love to, but I mean, we don't have a solution. We are perfectly into the recruitment part, but I'll be surprised if we don't have a solution like that. Because again, as I said, it's not about a technical solution that we're talking about. Of course, there could be a lot of this minor, small engagement pieces that people can potentially develop. When I am talking about gamification, what I am talking about is, or what I would like to see in schools would be to have this in the pedagogy, this practices. You create a scoreboard mechanism for all those non-teaching related things, non-theoretical things. You create a situation, you create such things, I would say, because that creates more value, I believe. Rather than, again, don't constrain yourself for, don't constrain yourself with the fact that I have to get a proper solution to introduce gamification. Because I believe that gamification is never related to a technology. You don't really need to have a platform to do that. You come with a pen and paper model for gamification. That itself is good. Like, for example, when we are hiring a particular candidate, there are a lot of post engagement, like you give an offer letter. And one of the important things what typically happens nowadays is you have a lot of offer out there in the market. When one candidate gets an offer from one organization, he would have by now got another 3 more offers. So how do you ensure that this particular candidate joins the organization? There are a lot of companies who do post-offer gamification. You gamify the journey that you improve the engagement level. You go to a stage where you say that, okay, this e-learning content is there. Why don't you complete this e-learning? And you take this assessment and there is a score attached to it. There could be certain debates. There could be certain small competitions. There could be some quiz, snippet-based quiz. All those minor engagements will contribute to the score of a particular candidate. So that it's not about a score. And you can, of course, reward the candidate. You'll say that, okay, this candidate scored high. We are giving you a certification as a reward. You can take the certification, could something like that. But what matters is this is increasing the engagement level of the candidate. Similarly, but here, what is the tool that we use? We are not using any tool. You can have just a simple emailing mechanism to keep them engaged. But you are following a gamified methodology. So to answer your question, we don't have a tool, and there might be a lot of tools in the market, but the concept is don't wait for the tool. Create a pattern, create a methodology to gamify your engagement with the students so that they grow on a day-by-day basis towards what they want to achieve. Create a lot of these clubs. Create a lot of, whatever you create this in a gamified manner, which, as in my previous slide, what I showed, there should be engagement, there should be scoreboard or leaderboard, there should be reward, there should be achievement, a sense of achievement. All those things should be there.
Thank you, Deepu. Do we have any more questions? Okay, I don't think we have any more questions. Industry often laments about skill gaps in students, while students complain about not getting the right opportunities. We hope this program was an eye-opener for teachers, parents, and students. Careers have an important role to play in our lives. Beyond giving us the income to live, careers give us direction and purpose in life. Work is worship, and we derive our satisfaction from it. Therefore, making a wise career choice that enables us to derive happiness from it will make our lives more complete and meaningful. Let's conclude this session keeping this in mind. We are grateful to Mr. Deepu Xavier for the insights that he has shared. I thank all participants for being with us. Thank you all and have a nice evening.
Thank you.